Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to try to explain Bitcoin, like to someone who's never even heard of it before. It can feel like a whole new language, you know?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. But once you get the basics, it's really exciting to see what it can do.
For sure. So to help us out with this, we're going to be looking at this YouTube video. It's called The Greatest Bitcoin Explanation of All Time in Under 10 Minutes.
Catchy title.
Right. It's from this channel called Altcoin Daily.
I've seen that one. It's pretty good, actually. They use some really interesting analogies.
That's what I like about it. It makes it easy to understand. So the video starts off by, explaining what Bitcoin actually is. It says it's the world's first cryptocurrency, which runs on something called a public blockchain network.
Right, and those are two terms that people are probably not familiar with.
Yeah. Cryptocurrency and blockchain. What are those? Help us out here.
Okay, so cryptocurrency is basically like digital money. It only exists online. And a blockchain is kind of like the system that makes it all work, like a public ledger that keeps track of all the Bitcoin transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. But it's still a little bit abstract. I like how the video compares it to email back in 1972.
Oh yeah, that's a good word.
Because back then, email was this brand new thing with tons of potential, but it's also kind of clunky and limited at first.
Right, like you had to know someone's exact email address and stuff.
Exactly. So Bitcoin is kind of like that now. It's still early days, but it has the potential to be huge. And another thing the video really focuses on is how Bitcoin is public.
Yeah, that's a key difference from the online payment systems we use today.
So what makes it so different?
Well, with traditional online payments, you always need a middleman, like a bank, to process the transaction.
Right.
But with Bitcoin, there's no central authority. It's all decentralized. So you can send Bitcoin to anyone in the world directly without needing permission from anyone.
So it's kind of like cash, but digital.
Exactly. The video makes that comparison too. It says Bitcoin is like digital cash that's accessible to everyone, no gatekeepers.
And anyone can use it.
Yeah, anyone. It doesn't matter where you live or your financial status, which is a big deal for people who don't have access to traditional banking.
I see what you mean. That's pretty revolutionary when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's not just about payments either, right? The video talks about how Bitcoin is building a new kind of infrastructure.
Right. They call it Web3. It's this idea of a decentralized internet where users have more control. Not like the internet we have now, where these big tech companies like Google and Facebook have all the power.
Web3, that sounds pretty futuristic.
It is, but it's starting to happen already, and Bitcoin is a big part of it, because it allows for peer-to-peer transactions and interactions without needing those big companies in the middle.
So like imagine a social media platform where you own your data, or a marketplace where you can buy and sell things directly from other people, without Amazon taking a cut.
Exactly. Or even a financial system that's not controlled by banks or governments. That's the kind of future Bitcoin is making possible.
Wow. Okay. So we've gone from understanding what Bitcoin is to like imagining a whole new internet. That's a pretty big leap. But why should anyone who's hearing about this for the first time care? What does it mean for their everyday life?
Well, the video makes a good point about that. It talks about how vulnerable our current systems are.
Yeah.
Like, think about all the data breaches we've seen, where hackers stole millions of people's personal information.
Oh yeah, like Equifax.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or those cases where hackers took control of like banks or even medical devices.
Scary stuff.
It is. And all because those systems have a single point of failure. If one central authority gets hacked or corrupted, the whole thing can crumble.
Right.
But with Bitcoin, there's no single point of attack.
Right.
Because it's decentralized, it's way harder to hack or manipulate. Even if one part of the network goes down, the rest can keep running.
So it's kind of like the internet itself, which was designed to be decentralized and resilient. And that's why it was able to disrupt all those old media companies.
Yeah.
Because it removed those single points of failure and gave everyone a voice.
Exactly. It's a powerful parallel. And Bitcoin has that same potential to disrupt things. It's not just about money. It's a fundamental shift in how we think about trust and security and control in this digital age. And that's something everyone should care about.
I agree. So we've laid a pretty good foundation here, but there's still so much more to explore. So in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to dig even deeper into Bitcoin and its impact on the future.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to our Bitcoin deep dive.
So we just talked about how Bitcoin is decentralized, but I'm still not really clear on how that actually works, like on a technical level.
Sure, well, that's where the blockchain comes in.
Right, the blockchain. The video mentioned that, but it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. What is it exactly?
Okay, so imagine a giant digital ledger that keeps track of every single Bitcoin transaction that's ever happened. And this ledger is not stored in one place. It's distributed across a network of computers all over the world.
So it's like a shared database.
Yeah, kind of, except it's not controlled by any single entity. And it's constantly being updated and verified by all these computers on the network.
Okay, but how does that actually work? Like, how do you make sure everyone's on the same page?
Well, every time a new transaction happens, it gets broadcast to the entire network. And then these special computers called miners, they compete to add this transaction to the blockchain.
Miners.
Yeah, they're basically like the accountants of the Bitcoin world. They solve these complex math problems to verify the transactions and add them to the blockchain. And the first miner to solve the problem gets rewarded with Bitcoin.
Oh, so that's how new Bitcoin is created.
Exactly, it's called mining. And the more miners there are, the more secure the network becomes.
So it's a giant global competition to keep the blockchain running. That's pretty cool.
It is, and because the blockchain is distributed across so many computers, it's virtually impossible to hack it. To alter a transaction, you'd have to control a majority of the computing power on the network, which would be incredibly expensive and difficult.
Okay, so that's how the decentralization works in practice. It's like a giant puzzle that everyone's working on together, and it's designed so that no one person can cheat the system.
Exactly, and that's what makes Bitcoin so appealing to people who don't trust centralized institutions or who live in places with unstable financial systems. It puts the power back in the hands of individuals.
I see. So it's not just about the technology, it's about the philosophy behind it too.
Right, it's about giving people more control over their own money and data, and it's about creating a more transparent and equitable system.
Okay, I'm starting to see the big picture now. So what about the future? Where do we go from here? The video hinted at all these possibilities beyond payments, like supply chain management or voting systems.
Yeah, the applications for blockchain technology are pretty much endless because it can be used to track and verify anything of value. So you can imagine a world where supply chains are more transparent, where voting is more secure, where we have new forms of digital identity that are more private and secure.
That sounds pretty amazing.
It is, and it's all thanks to this crazy idea of a decentralized network that no one controls.
But let's be realistic. Bitcoin isn't perfect. I mean, the video even said that it's not always a stable store of value, which means the price can go up and down a lot.
Right. Bitcoin is still a relatively new technology, and there's still a lot of uncertainty around it. So it's important to be aware of the risks before you invest.
Definitely. But even with the challenges, Bitcoin represents a major shift in how we think about money and technology. It's a reminder that innovation can come from unexpected places, and that the future is often shaped by the people who dare to challenge the status quo.
Couldn't agree more.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So we spent a lot of time talking about what Bitcoin is and how it works, but now I kind of want to look ahead, like what could the future hold for Bitcoin?
Yeah, well, I think the video made a good point about that. Like, remember how they compared owning Bitcoin to owning a piece of the early internet?
Right, like buying stock in Amazon back in the 90s.
Exactly. And we're starting to see those possibilities play out now with Web3.
Web3, right. That's the idea of a decentralized internet that we talked about before, where users have more control. Is that actually happening, though? Or is it just like a pipe dream?
It's definitely happening. I mean, we're seeing all these decentralized applications popping up, like social media platforms and marketplaces and even financial services, and they're all built on blockchain technology. So instead of relying on companies like Facebook or Amazon, these platforms let users interact directly with each other.
So it's like cutting out the middleman.
Yeah, exactly. And that gives users more control over their data and their money. Plus, it makes it way harder for anyone to censor content or control access to information.
Okay, so that's the long-term vision. But what about right now? Like, how are people actually using Bitcoin today?
Well, a lot of people are using it as a store of value, like a hedge against inflation. You know, because Bitcoin is scarce, there's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin ever created.
So it's kind of like digital gold.
Yeah, some people see it that way. And because it's not controlled by any government or central bank, it can be a safe haven in times of economic uncertainty. Plus, it's really easy to send and receive Bitcoin anywhere in the world, which makes it a useful tool for international remittances, people sending money back to their families in other countries.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's also accessible to anyone, right? Even people who don't have bank accounts.
Exactly. All you need is an internet connection. So it's a really powerful tool for financial inclusion, especially in developing countries where a lot of people don't have access to traditional financial services.
I'm starting to see how Bitcoin is more than just a technology. It's like a movement towards more freedom and autonomy.
I think that's a good way to put it. It's about empowering individuals and giving them more control over their own lives.
Wow, this has been a really eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've just scratched the surface of what Bitcoin is and what it can become. We started with a simple question, what is Bitcoin? And we ended up talking about a whole new way of organizing society.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. And it all comes down to this idea of decentralization, taking power away from centralized institutions and giving it back to the people.
No, well said. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
It was great having you. And thanks to everyone for listening. We hope you learned something new about Bitcoin and that you'll continue to explore this fascinating technology.
Yeah.
Until next time.